Hello and good evening. A very warm welcome to our viewers to Penmancy Pen Connect, which is our endeavor to help bring authors and readers together at a single platform. As part of this initiative, we have interacted with a lot of authors and publishers during this last month. We had Anirban Bhattacharya, we had Vani Kaushal, Harshali Singh, and Suhail Mathur. Today we have with us Mr. Bhaswar Mukherjee. Please join me in welcoming our guest, Mr. Bhaswar Mukherjee. Mr. Bhaswar is an engineer, an IIM graduate, an ex-banker, and now an entrepreneur. His stories have been published in various anthologies, and in 2019-20, his short stories for the Times of India Season 3 were shortlisted for the top 10 by authors like Nayanthara Sehgal, Amitav Ghosh, Upamanyu Chatterjee, and Vivek Shanbhag. Bhaswar has recently launched his book, Abdul Karim Telgi and the Stamp Scam. Welcome to Penmancy, Bhaswar. We are absolutely delighted to have you as our special guest tonight.
Very happy to be here, Chandra. Thank you so much. Yes.
All right. It's absolutely our pleasure. So, in this session, let me just tell for the benefit of our viewers, we're going to be talking about the potential of non-fiction in India. But before we begin our session, I would like to thank you, Bhaswar, on behalf of the entire Penmancy family for sponsoring your book as a prize for our monthly writing contest in April. 3 of our writers will be the lucky recipients of this wonderful book. Could you
Very
let
happy
us
to do that.
know a little bit more about your book, Abdul Karim Telgi and the Stamp Scam?
All right. So here is the book, which is
Yeah.
So this book essentially chronicles the life of this scamster. It's in fact the name of the book is The Counterfeiter, because what he did was he scammed the stamp system of India in the days when it used to be physical stamping. And
Right.
this book essentially chronicles his entire journey from womb to grave, and it tries to kind of bring out how a person who was of fairly, very fairly, shall I say, common intellect, actually managed to game the system. How was it possible that he was able to obtain a stamp license before
Yeah.
others? How did he have the politicians, the policemen? How did he get into the hallowed halls of the stamp press to get actually the authentic machines which are used to make the stamps? And so that is essentially what this book is about. It chronicles his journey right till his death, and in 2017 October.
All right.
And the reason why this book came out was because a full blown story on such an important scamster was never told before, and that's the reason my agent and I decided that we needed to tell this story, and that's the reason it was out.
Quite surprising that it was such a big scam, and we have no written records in terms of books on this scam.
No, there are lots of newspaper articles, media reports. There have been movies made. There are a couple of books, but one of them only is like a short collection of this particular story called Dangerous Minds, and the other one is written by a reporter called Sanjay Singh. But that came out in 2004.
Okay.
Which was much before Telgi passed away in 2017. So a lot happened between 2004 and 2017.
Yes. So
So
it would be shedding a different kind of light as compared
yes,
to your book.
yes, and that was in the Hindi vernacular. We must remember that it was not an
Ah.
English publication.
Okay. Okay. So a different target audience as well.
Yes.
Right, right. It's such an interesting topic to be writing about and speaking about it. And I just love the book cover. It's so beautifully designed. Did you have your ideas as well in this?
No, actually, this the credit for this goes to my agent Suhail Mathur, who designed the book cover, because this was actually from one of the newspaper or articles which came out, if I'm not mistaken, by Hindustan Times.
All right.
And this, there are this guy is smiling while he's walking to the court. There are policemen smiling all around him. There seem to be, a fairly good buddy system going on. So it was a very
looks like a
attractive cover.
circus.
So, yeah, so it was a very attractive cover, and that's the reason it was selected.
Very nice. Good choice there. Bhaswar, your previous book, It Happens, Stories of Human Relationships, was a work of fiction, while here you have explored non-fiction. So what made you switch from fiction to non-fiction? What was the draw there?
Okay, uh, so it is not a switch. Okay, and I was writing predominantly short stories, anthologies. Whilst
Uh-huh.
I had written two full blown novels, but they are not yet published.
Okay.
But so I have two full length novels ready, which is fiction. But
Oh,
what
wonderful.
happened was, when this entire thing, when I started talking to my agent sometime late in 2019 or early 2019, and I was talking about my books, and everybody felt, my agent and other people, that it is very difficult to kind of push fiction in the market, because publishers were kind of pushing back on fiction. They wanted more of non-fiction. So there was a
Right.
question saying that, I had a background in the finance industry. I had been working for such a long time. So why didn't I take a stab at non-fiction? So, we were shooting the breeze on a number of issues, and what could be done, what couldn't be done. And he always kept encouraging me, saying that, why didn't you look at non-fiction? And
Uh-huh.
one of the good things about writing non-fiction is that, your word count can be as low as something like 40,000, which is slightly longer than a novella in fiction.
Right.
And you can still come out with, fairly important, incisive facts. So that's how this book happened. So looking at the scams which were there, okay, at that point of time, almost every scam had been covered, but this was one scam which did not have full coverage. So we thought that there was a space in the non-fiction narrative category, or the true crime category, where
Right.
this book would fit, and that's the reason we zeroed down on this book.
I guess it's an excellent choice, right? Because the market right now for non-fiction has a lot of self-help, health, and biographies. But then we do not have something like true crime in the non-fiction. So was that the intent, that you wanted to target a particular section of your reading readers?
No, actually, there are quite a few true crimes coming out. So
Mm-hmm.
what happens is, when you're looking at something like true crime or scam, or you're looking at these kind of, you know, uh, it is obviously far more exciting, if I can use the term, than say a management book. So it kind of
Right.
fits in very well with the readers, because readers want to read about lives, true lives of people. That is something which is there. I mean, everybody wants to
Yes.
know what exactly happened. And if you can, put in a perspective of your own, in the way you saw this story, without actually making it a work of fiction, or without, letting the muse take you by her hand and, starting to imagine things, I think it can tell a fairly comprehensive point of view about what happened with a particular person. So it's not the true crime. There are lots of books on true crime happening, but this particular scam we felt was not covered adequately. So there
Mm-hmm.
was a space, and therefore, the book.
Right. Since you mentioned about the muse, I want to take that a little further. So, your writing style, when it is fiction, would be way different with a non-fiction writing style, right? So,
Absolutely.
what difference was there in your techniques?
Okay, first of all, fiction requires you to be in a very, very strictly defined perimeter of
Mm-hmm.
thinking and writing. So there is a fair amount of planning which you need to do in terms of how you want to do the talk about the book, because there is more than enough information, okay, about a
Right.
particular event or incident which you perhaps want to talk about. If you're talking about, either something like which has happened in the past, which could be, to classify as history, or a particular person, or a biography. So there is a lot of information available if that person's life has been, colorful enough. The question is, how do you bring it down?
Right.
How do you plan out the book so that you are able to put all the important elements to cover the various facets of this personality, or person, or fact which you want to show,
Mm-hmm.
without making it very, very pedantic or boring for the reader. Whereas when you're writing fiction, frankly, I mean, the way I write fiction is, I start off with a character conflict. That to
Mm-hmm.
me is more important than the plot. And then the
Okay.
character conflict drives the plot very often. So I don't know where the story is going eventually. It might end up
Uh-huh.
somewhere entirely different. We can't do that with nonfiction. So
Right.
nonfiction is very, very, it's like fairly straight jacketed. Having said that, there is a lot of scope now for putting a valued opinion in a work of nonfiction. There are lots of people who have done that very, very brilliantly, and it's something which is appreciated by the reading audience quite a bit. So, for example, if you look at a book like Michael Lewis wrote a book on the baseball game.
Okay.
Okay, he called it Moneyball. It's a very famous book of nonfiction. Now, he, instead of talking about statistics and what happened in baseball, he pins the entire story on the general manager of Oakland Group's, the baseball team called Billy Bean, and it
Okay.
makes for a delightful reading.
All
Or,
right.
for example, who would have ever thought, a very renowned doctor, Siddharth Mukherjee, my namesake, wrote a book called The Emperor of Maladies. Okay.
Right.
Well, I mean, perhaps speaking of from Jhumpa Lahiri's book of Interpreter of Maladies, but he wrote this book called the Emperor of Maladies, a biography of cancer. And that is a book which is so engaging. So he writes it with the precision of a cellular biologist, along with the strength of a narrator of history. It's brilliant. So there are lots of, it's a very, very wide canvas. So whilst I say that you're
Yes.
perimetered, you are still able to be creative within that perimeter. And that is where your strength in nonfiction will actually shine through, because people don't really want to read something which is fairly chronological. They might as well read the
Right.
news.
It's not a history book that we are reading.
It's not. So that is where nonfiction can really shine, to my mind. That's where the true potential of nonfiction is.
But do you think it is important to keep your bias aside? Is it very difficult to do that when you're writing nonfiction?
It is very important. It is very, very, you've touched a very important part, because a lot of people, if they don't keep that bias outside, what happens is then you have actually created an opinion or an essay.
Right.
It's more of an opinion, which is fine. I mean, you can have an opinion on any topic, and there are lots of nonfiction which is on opinion / essay kind of topics. But if you really want to give a true account, it's very important to keep finding out whether your biases have been tested or not. I mean, are they actually there, or you're steering clear? So just to give an example, obviously when you talk about Telgi and the stamp scam, you're immediately thinking about corrupt policemen and corrupt politicians and so on and so forth. And therefore that can actually skew the mind of the reader. Right? So when I'm talking about a particular character, because what I did was I created this entire book out of the cases involving Telgi. So there were about I think about 200 odd cases against Telgi in various courts. Yeah. So I had to go through all the papers regarding those 200 cases. So what I tried to do was, if somebody was accused, now he has given a defense.
Right.
I tried to put both sides there as well, so that the reader who is looking at it is not just getting one side of the picture. He's not just getting the accusation, he or she is not getting the accusations. That person is also reading what was that other guy's point of view. And there are very, 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 very important points there. So, if you look at the way the cases happened, a lot of the people who got accused actually got, were finally left. They were acquitted.
Oh.
And everybody might think that the acquittal is because of the fact that you have either the money power or the political power. That's not true. Very often they got acquitted on the merit of their defense. So it's very important for you to present both sides, so that the reader can get, you put it across and let the reader decide, what could have happened. Because standing so far ahead in time, it's so difficult for you to actually know, the nuances of place which has happened.
Correct. And I guess that's where it would have been really challenging for you, right? Because you are going through the cases. Obviously, you will have certain emotions that you have to keep them aside when you're writing about all this.
Absolutely. That's very important.
Very interesting. I want to delve more upon this research. How long did this entire process take you?
Okay. So initially when I started looking at the book, and trying to piece together what could have happened, starting from Khanapur, where this guy was living in literally on the railway platform with his family. His father was a porter in the railways, and selling chikus and so on trains. And then he went to school, college. So I was trying to piece together. And of course, there was a lot of information. And very often what happens is, because of the fact that the way we are, the media tries to, most of the stories you read, there is a lot of masala there. There's a lot of, there's a lot of, so I came across so many articles and clippings and reports and so on about how he used to visit the bar dancers and who he used to like. And so I said, look, this is not the real story. We want to know how exactly did he perpetrate this crime.
Mm-hmm.
So I said the best way to do it is actually, and I started thinking as to how to do, and then finally I reached out and I found that this guy has got 200 cases. So I said, okay, let's start reading the cases. So I took the help of a lawyer friend of mine. He's an advocate in a firm in Calcutta. His name is Dipankar. So I told him that, look, I need your help because I need to wade through this entire legalese of habeas corpus and writ
Right.
petitions and judgments and so on and so forth. So and he helped me. So that's how it happened. So I actually waded through 1,000 2,000 pages of book, and this took me about 5 months just to do the
Wow.
research. And once I did the research, how do I put it in actual chronology? Do I go back and forth, or do I work straight through the timeline? These were the decisions which one needed to take. And I also felt that because this was a specific topic on the stamp scam, it was also important to give a kind of an appendix or a reference as to what is the whole thing about stamping in India? Why is it required? What's the
Right.
difference between a document and an instrument? So that, because one of the things you have a challenge when writing non-fiction is, if your space is, shall we say, very specific or esoteric or not for the common person, that person needs to have a context as to what is this all
Correct.
about. So that is the reason why I have a fairly elaborate appendix in the book as well, which talks about, what is this whole thing on stamping, what are the various kinds of stamps, and so on and so forth. So that the person can read that, and I put that right when I do the introduction, saying that anybody who wants to find out more about this business can look at that.
Yeah,
So
that's
that
really helpful
so the
to
research took about
understand what we're
close to
getting
five
into.
6 months. Yeah,
Wow.
the book
But
writing
Bhaskar,
took 4 months, but the research took 6 months.
uh-huh. Tell me one thing. I mean, we shouldn't be really talking about it, but then there are so many scams in India. There is fodder scam, and there are so many other scams. So, but why did you choose this stamp scam only? I'm sure there are many scams on which books have not been written.
Okay, so there were a lot of things. So when I started reading about this scam, so first of all, we identified that there was a gap.
Right.
And then when I started reading about it, there were a lot of questions which started coming up, which I found extremely intriguing. The whole thing of intrigue. So just let me tell you what they were. So right through the cases, when I started reading the cases from very, very eminent judges and so on, everybody was pegging the stamp value at 25,000, 30,000 crore. Whereas when this case was handed over to the CBI in 2004, CBI put the stamp scam value at 172 crores. That's it. 172 crores. The amount of money which Telgi owed to income tax, which were the claims against him when he died, was about 190 crores.
Wow.
The amount of fines he was supposed to give, which he was unable to give, was 250 crores. So the question is, if the penalties are so much, how can the total stamp scam value be 172 crores? It seems to be bizarre. So
Right.
these were the things which drew me into the research process. All right, and that's why I thought that it's good to try and find out what really happened and what are the various perspectives, and so on and so forth. And then also when we found that this guy apparently had a number of properties all across India, and
Uh-huh.
these properties were all so there were fairly eminent entities. So there was Reserve Bank of India, Enforcement Directorate, income tax authorities. They all sat down and decided that we need to take these properties, and they took the properties so that the fines could be paid and the dues, what he
Oh,
had to give,
okay.
could be paid. And then finally, when this guy is appealing in the court, and his wife Shahida comes and says, there are 9 more properties worth 100 crores which I just want to give up. So the question is, when eminent people have sat and found out where all these properties are, how come these properties got nobody knew about these properties? So there was a lot of intrigue. Of course, any scam will have its intrigue. I'm sure if I were to dive into some other scam, I'm sure there would be equal number of questions. But I think because of this mammoth level of intrigue, and the fact that, see, this guy passed away in 2017, so it was already
Right.
cold in public memory. So that was what
Hmm.
was dissuading me. I was saying that it's not a current event which has happened. It's something happened in the past. But then I thought it's important to kind of put it in perspective, because there have been so many things which are a big question mark in this case. All right, and that's the reason. And when I
So,
started digging, the intrigue kept increasing.
uh-huh.
How one police officer's he was his dismissal was delayed because they actually were tried to show that he was he caught a large haul of counterfeit scams. How
Oh,
the people who were running parallel businesses to Telgi, how they took the rap for Telgi's business. So there were it just went on and on. So that's the reason why I picked up. That was the attraction of picking this.
and I guess your background in the finance industry makes you a subject matter expertise on this. But did that make things easier or complicated for you?
No, of course, it definitely helped. It obviously helped because I knew what the process of stamping is. I knew because in a bank you keep stamping documents, so you know what it's required and so on. The other part which was fairly important is when this scam came to light, a lot of seminal changes happened. So the entire stamp, a lot of the acts were changed. E-stamping was introduced. When
Okay,
e-stamping got introduced, how did it impact the lives of the stamp vendors?
step vendors.
Yeah, so there were a lot of other social factors which came in as well because of this scam. So as far as my background is concerned, it I think it helped. And I think that's the other important thing about non-fiction, because at the end of the day there is also an item of credibility. Why should somebody
Right.
pick up your book on non-fiction and read it unless he believes that you perhaps know about the subject and therefore can speak about it? Otherwise it becomes, I can, like, for example, will I do a book on medicine? Obviously not. Nobody will believe me.
No, but what would your advice be for somebody who wants to write nonfiction on a topic on which they do not really have expertise? What would you suggest? How do they go about it?
One of the things which I feel is fairly important as far as fiction versus non-fiction is concerned, and we know today that non-fiction is selling better than fiction, not just in India but in markets outside as well, is
Right.
the fact that when we talk about fiction, we know that this is XYZ author,
Hmm.
right? So you know that there is an author, and everybody starts searching for the author. In
Correct.
non-fiction, you want help with a topic. You want help with cookery. You want help with travel. You want help with medicine, management. You want to know what true crimes have happened, what books. So then you start searching by the name of the book. So what can actually help someone who is actually interested in building, a credibility in this space of non-fiction
Right.
is perhaps to have, start writing a number of blogs on the topic on which he or she wants to write.
Ah,
So it
okay.
does two things. One is that it builds your expertise because you have to do a lot of studying if you want to write on anything. So when you
Right.
start writing a short essay or a blog or a short article for a newspaper, maybe there are so many online platforms where you can write. A, it builds your expertise.
Right.
Second is it gives you discoverability. So if anyone does a search engine optimization and writes the word true crimes,
Mm-hmm.
it's quite possible that XYZ's name will pop up because he is written on true crime, or that person has got a blog on medicine, or this person has written an article on travel. So that increases your discoverability as an author as well, because
Right.
then everybody's interested in the topic, right? And then once they find
Correct.
that this person has got some body of work, or they read the background of the person and they believe that, hey, this person is a doctor, this person is a cook, or
Hmm.
whatever it is, then the faith develops. So for anyone who wants to write in an area where he or she is not comfortable, the first is you have to develop your expertise. But I have a two-pronged approach. I mean, what I recommend is not just develop your expertise, but also build your credibility. Okay, so that
I
if
guess
someone
both
does a
go
search
hand
on
in
the
hand.
topic, your name pops up.
Right, right, right. So I guess building the expertise as well as having a credibility in your writing, both are going to play an important role in whatever the writer wishes to publish and
Absolutely,
bring to the
very very
readers.
important.
But do you think, like, if uh, Emily, a new writer who is going to get into this venture of writing a non-fiction, say they practice on their building the expertise and gaining credibility, still, do you think it is going to be easy or difficult for an unknown name to present a non-fiction in current market scenarios?
See, now let us. So there is someone who comes from, say, a position of strength, right? So typically, what happens is when you look at nonfiction. So if there is a book done on, so if it's a biography, or if
Right.
it's an autobiography or a memoir, so
Hmm.
that there is a credibility of that person. You know that this person is either a famous politician or a famous movie star.
Right.
But there are of course a lot of people who write for. So biographies are written for celebrities or other people. So one of the things is that that area must interest you. That space must interest you. It's not
Yes.
that you feel that, okay, non-fiction is going to sell, so I'm going to try and pick up a topic and write about it. So A, it must interest you. Second is that you must build your discoverability or brand value or knowledge in that topic itself. So I would very strongly encourage, see, at the end of the day, every one of us has experiences in something or the other.
Correct.
Okay. And today, what has happened is because of the pandemic, it has actually opened an entire new world, right? So if you talk of things like,
Absolutely.
mental depression, if you talk of things like viruses, if you talk of things like, um, you know, there's so many things. It's just opened up, and everybody can write about it, right? So that is what I'm talking about. So, for example, I read this book called, which was by a gentleman called, I think his name is Vinod Kaprik, who wrote a book about these 7 migrants who were
Who
traveling from,
traveled?
yeah, who were
Yes.
traveling from all the way from Ghaziabad to some place in Bihar,
Bihar. Yes.
and he called the book 1232 kilometers, the long journey home. Now,
Yes.
obviously, he's himself not obviously faced it, but it is something which has interested him, and this is very, very topical because we know the kind of problems
Hmm.
which migrant laborers, faced. So, if you are able to pick up something topical, okay, and you may not have an expertise in it, but if you pick up something topical, something of interest, then of course you could kind of, put it forward. And at this point of time, everybody is looking at it, right? Or if
Yeah.
somebody, let's say, for example, if somebody's gone through a mental depression, I'm just giving an example. That person is not a clinical psychologist or not but the person has gone through it. So from that perspective, the person wants to write about mental illness. It could be a fantastic work of nonfiction. It could help a lot of other people because this is a true life incident of someone who has faced it. So everybody
Correct.
has experiences either of their own or acquired, and you should, if you want to write about that, that could become a fairly good topic for a nonfiction. And today, the nonfiction can be, the topics are endless, and you could write on so many
Yes.
things.
Correct. There's no dearth of the wide range which is available right now. We can write on anything
Yeah.
as long as the writer themselves are passionate about what they're writing and
Yeah,
believe in
so
it.
you have to be passionate. It may be something you have experienced, or you've seen somebody else closely who has gone through it, or you're an expert, subject matter expert at it. Any one of them will be fine. Even a subject matter expert. So let's talk about a subject matter expert. If what is happening in the world today, you need to also keep yourself abreast, because if you want to
Right.
talk about it, it's going to be otherwise very difficult to do.
I'll have a few questions from our viewers, Bhaswar. Before
Sure.
that, I have just one more question for you regarding this stamp scam. Now, we know that research plays a very important, a crucial role in nonfiction. So, for any writer, access to those people who have played an important role in this scenario, the situation is important. How easy or difficult was for you to access, the close contacts of Telgi, interview them? How accessible were they? How was the interaction?
Okay, actually, very, very difficult. So what you're talking about is what is called primary research, when the
Right.
person involved or whose story you're writing about, or people known to him or her, are you can meet. So primary research for me was very difficult. A, because it was a kind of a dated scam. B, because it was a time of the pandemic, and moving around and talking to people was extremely difficult. So yes, it was a huge challenge. If you can get primary research done, it is fantastic, but you
Uh-huh.
have a lot of information today which is available. So if you look at the Digital Library of India, it's actually a wealth house of information. There is no topic there which you cannot get adequate information about, and it's authentic information, because the most important thing about information is that it has to be true, right? If you just can't depend on the our friend internet, because there
Correct.
are there are so many things which is, so you have a wealth of information which is available. So I basically based, and I knew that I had to base it on something credible, so I looked at the cases.
Uh-huh.
Someone could pick up something else and do it, but it's important to so if you can get primary research, fantastic. My book unfortunately does not have primary research, but I did a lot of secondary research, which is how I could write or complete that book.
So the lack of primary research in your case has not affected the authenticity of the narration.
No, definitely not the authenticity, but in terms of whether it could have been better if there was primary research, absolutely yes.
All
Absolutely
right.
yes, that is
So
always good.
let me take, I have a question here from Sonal Singh. She wants to know if language plays a greater role in nonfiction?
So if you're talking about the method of writing, well, let me just tell you about this thing. So right now, if you look at the Indian, so we have got 22 official languages in which people write, but 55% of the books are still in English, 35%
Right.
are in Hindi, and the balance are in other languages. That's the way I understand the market. So
Okay.
as far as you're talking about in terms of language, uh, English as a language itself is where the maximum work happens, and it's quite interesting that a number of those works, or if you look at English, the maximum number of readership is actually in states like Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Tamil Nadu. All right, which
Uh-huh.
is very, very surprising. I found that information quite interesting. But yes, the important thing about writing non-fiction is how do you make it engaging? Because I read the second part of your question. Uh, so what happens is, a, how do you write it? So I gave two examples of two people who approached it very, very differently. So you can do that. Which, so what happens is you can use your creative flair of fiction
Mm-hmm.
without using your imagination to write a book of non-fiction, because there is a term today which is called creative non-fiction, and
Right.
there is a lot of work happening and a lot of people are writing because people are very interested to get engaged in somebody's story or somebody's life, and you can use your artistic liberties to make that a very, very interesting premise without sounding pedantic. So one of the things which one has to be very careful about is not talking about in language which upsets the reader. So if somebody's talking about the pandemic and tries to get into the various strains of the virus, then obviously it's going to be very, very boring. People are
Yes,
not
we are
interested in
not
saying,
looking
so
at a medical journal. You're right.
yeah, it's not a medical journal. So that's the reason. So even if you look at, and it is quite interesting, because if you look at the publishing market in the country, 60% is academic publishing, okay, which is
Oh,
educational, what is called educational, 60%.
okay.
Okay, 60 to 70%. There is something called academic and professional, where everything in terms of your journals, etc., comes in, which is another 20%. So your trade publishing, what we are actually talking about today, is just 10
Mm-hmm.
to 15%. Okay. In the
Interesting.
US, this is 60%.
Oh,
So India has a long way to go here, and there is a huge opportunity here, because what we also have
right.
to understand is that this entire this e-commerce space where you're talking of audiobooks, etc., is also increasing. So our audiobook versus print is just about 10 to 15%. So in America, for example, it's 25%. The reason why I use America is because if you look at the publishing business of America,
Most of
it's
them,
about
yes.
$28 billion. Ours is about 8 billion. But the good news is that if you look at global publishing statistics, they have said that the globally the publishing industry, which is about a little over 132 billion or something, is
Wow.
expected to grow at a compounded annual growth rate of about 3-4%.
Okay.
Whereas India is supposed to be growing at around 12%. Okay, the growth. So if you look at the destination model of the US, I don't know whether we'll reach there or not. It's very, very encouraging, because there is a lot of information. People do require a lot of help. The reason why nonfiction is selling so well is because people are looking out, reaching out for topics which will help them for self-improvement. And they don't want it to be delivered in the way academic books are delivered. They want it to be
Right,
done in a
right,
way which
certainly.
engages them. And if you can do that, so if you can use your creative flair in doing that, it's fantastic.
I hope that answers your query, Sonal. I have another one related to this. It's from Ram. So, to continue with what we were talking about, so is there a particular type of nonfiction that sells the most in India?
Okay, obviously, what unfortunately happens is that a lot of books on politics, celebrity,
Oh, yes.
they sell like crazy. Okay, so in terms of the publisher will lap it up. But yes, even things like true crime, scams, books on, and of course something which is topical. So if you wanted to give a perspective on the pandemic, or talk about what is happening, how is it impacting lives, or things
Right.
like health, or how do you keep your calm. Okay, so meditation. So there are all of this which is now jostling for play. But to my mind, what we call biographies, memoirs and autobiographies are still sell the most, to my mind. And of course, I'm just one non-fiction book old, so I'm not an expert on the subject, but that's what I think.
But what kind of nonfiction do you prefer reading?
Um, so I prefer anything which talks or which gives a very different perspective about whatever we are saying. So if I look at someone like Malcolm Gladwell,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, or if I look at someone like Jim Collins, or these are they are people who have a different perspective in the way things happen. They attract me quite a bit. Okay, because they have a different perspective in the way they talk about whatever is happening. And of course, if a book gets popular, then you also want to read it. So that is there. So if a
Any
book has
Indian
suddenly become
favorites?
popular, you would want to read it.
Any Indian non-fiction authors? Any favorites there?
Um, Indian non-fiction I spoke about. So there's a lady called Kavita who's written a very good book on the loss of the landscape, which talks about the entire thing about the drought in India and Maharashtra. That's a very well done book. Lots of Indian are I spoke about Siddharth Mukherjee. He's written very
Right.
good book. Saurabh writes very well on the financial part, on stock markets and so on. He's another very very strong writer. Um, so there are a number of them who write very well, but again, it's, as I said, it's more on the topic than the author.
Topic. So it depends on
So for
what you
example,
like.
even if you look now, you have the Amitabh Ghosh, who's one of the biggest names in literary fiction. After 1992, he's ventured into non-fiction. So if you look at The Great Derangement, which was written in 2016, or The Nutmeg's Curse, which was a follow-up to that of that book, it talks about climate change.
Right.
So a lot of people are getting interested in writing about non-fiction. Someone as who's such a well-established name in literary fiction.
I have a comment here from Monica who says that there is a great market for true crime in India. It is an overexplored and overdense section in other countries. We have a wonderful opportunity to dig into this niche and bring India to the table in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something which grabs people, right? See, even in fiction, crime sells a lot. Mystery and
Right.
crime, if you look at it globally, that's the largest selling segment, right? Even more than romance. Like in India, romance is a big thing, I know. But if you look globally speaking, mystery and crime is a very, very attractive genre. So when you're talking of true crime, you're saying, yes, it's a crime, so it has got all the trappings, but it is something which has happened. So it obviously will have a lot of attraction for the audience. You're right, Monica. You're right.
Right. Absolutely. There is a wide market that is untapped for so many of us to explore about. Since we were talking about the research, the primary research and the secondary research, I have a question here from Deepthi. So she wants to know if anyone close to 𝐊𝐺𝐢 objected to anything that you've written.
Deepthi, nothing so far. But if
Okay.
something happens, I'll shout for help. Nothing has happened. I
Oh,
mean,
we've
I've been
got you.
asked this question a number of times, and
Uh-huh.
my answer has been that yes, there were a number of names which are involved. I have spoken about those names, but the fact of the matter is, I've tried to present both sides. I have to try to present their arguments also. So it has
Mm-hmm.
been more like a sutradhar. Although I think it's important for you to give your opinion about even a true event you have written about. So I have a chapter in the end called The Famous Last Words, which speaks about my perspective on the full thing. But when I'm talking about the events which happened during 𝐊𝐺𝐲's time, I've tried to give a fairly equivocal kind of I've taken an equivocal stand and tried to present what both parties have said. So nothing so far, but if it happens, I'll shout.
All right, let me take another one. Uh, why are Indians obsessed with non-fiction compared to fiction in terms of books, while visually fiction movies outperform documentaries? This is from Prasanna TG.
Yeah, Prasanna, there are two, three things why Indians are obsessed with non-fiction. First of all, just in sheer numbers of fiction versus non-fiction, there is way too many fiction coming out, right? So if you look at the 1 lakh books coming out, over 70 to 80% is fiction. All right, so the rest is non-fiction. So there is a demand and supply issue, and this whole thing on self-publishing has opened the, I don't want to use the term Pandora's box, but it's opened the landscape for everybody to write fiction. So therefore, there is a definitely a imbalance between demand and supply. Second is, people definitely feel, and this whole thing in India, and this is a mindset which has been there for many years, that you are educated. Okay, so that is a big thing about. So people want to educate themselves on various things. You will have
Mm-hmm.
noticed that this is which has happened. So everybody has become an expert on the coronavirus
Right.
because they have read and educated themselves about starting from the B.A.1.2 and B.A.1. I mean, they've gone because it's something which engages people, because they believe that if you have to, carry out an intelligent conversation or have an opinion on something, you need to educate
You should
yourself.
be
So
well
that
read.
is
Yes.
fairly paramount in our culture, and I think it's something which is fairly deeply rooted there. The third thing I think which has happened is that and you may argue saying that, in these times of depression, or in these times of where everybody's so stressed out, why are there not people reading more fiction? Why are there so many reading non-fiction? Because you've had another big thing, my friend. What has happened is the whole OTT platform,
Mm-hmm.
okay, where have your everything. You can just switch on the television and you can have anything you wish to see. That
Correct.
has impacted fiction greatly, to my mind. Although we could argue till the cows come home that, people who read fiction and people who watch
Watch.
television are two different categories. But I would definitely beg to differ. So if I want to get entertained after, a very very stressful day, I can, I put it on. And that's the other thing which has impacted fiction quite a bit. Yeah. So it's let's hope that it's just a temporary thing. Let's hope that changes. So, and I think once people start going back outside their homes, maybe the whole attraction for getting stuck in front of the idiot box will go down, and people will still come back home and read a good fiction book before they put the lights out.
So, but then, while a non-fiction, reading a non-fiction is still considered an educative experience, we really don't have a market for documentaries, right? Not many people are fond of watching them.
True. True, I would say, yeah. So if you're talking of the BBC or the Discovery Planet or something, I don't think there's a huge audience for it.
Right.
There could be one or two shows which are Attenborough shows or something which are very
Correct.
watched very regularly, but otherwise no. But I
I
think
have
what has also happened is just the times we live in.
right. This is another question I have here from Ram. What about the names and places in non-fiction? Is it a must that they should be real, or can they be fictionalized? Oh, that's
No, they
interesting.
must be real. Otherwise, it's non-fiction. And sometimes, Ram, I'm glad you asked this question. So if you look at I forget the name of the person um, who created the story on Padmavati, okay, which talks about Padmini, the queen of Chittor, and Alauddin Khilji. Now, if you look at it, I think his name starts with a J. It's not coming to me right now. So he has written this, and he has finally acknowledged that it's allegorical, it's not true. But it has become, by word of mouth, it has become a part of the Rajput folklore. Everybody believes
Right.
that it's true. So, and that's the way it was also presented in the movie. So, but that is actually historical fiction. It is not non-fiction.
Non.
All right, but it's now everybody accepts it. So sometimes what happens is even historical facts and and events may perhaps get distorted. But when you're doing when you're writing non-fiction, and if you're writing something like this on history, and of course you've got stalwarts like Ramchandra Guha and so on, who write so well on historical fiction, on historical non-fiction,
Non-fiction.
that you need to make them absolutely true because they are the way they were. And you may be facing these challenges that sometimes you may come across such events where you don't know whether which actually did happen or didn't happen. But that's a
So I
challenge
guess
too.
for non-fiction, the key things that we as writers have to always keep in mind is have enough knowledge about it, be credible, and not distort, and not let our personal biases get into the narration.
Not personal biases, not imagination. So you need to, once you written the book, obviously that is some for any book, you need to actually vet it and get it read by somebody who knows
Correct.
about it. That's very important for nonfiction.
All right. We are almost at the end of the session, but I have just one last question that I want to know. If you had a chance to meet the real Telgi, what is the one question that you would ask him?
Who would ask who?
If you had a chance to meet Telgi,
To meet Telgi. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So, what is it that you would like to ask him?
It's a tough one. Because there are so many questions I want to ask him, because I had a lot of
Okay.
questions. In fact, I was telling you before the session started that he had a confession which I was trying to get from the RTI,
Yeah.
which I never got. And it is very important because in that confession, he's spoken about a lot of people. So those are that question I definitely wanted to ask him. But uh, what I think, which I would want to ask him is a few more details about how did he actually go about, you know, getting into the good books of people. because that is something that seems to be so difficult. Now, if I know someone and that someone knows someone else, and there are lots of incidences in that book which talks about it. How did he get his stamp license, for example? Because he knew someone who got him the license. Okay, so it's very clear. It's fine. So I have a friend or an influencer who I have. But when he went into the India security press, he actually made his way from the watchman to the deputy manager. I want to know how he did it.
That's an
How
interesting
do you
journey.
make your way by walking into a premise of a place where you don't know anyone and work
Exactly.
your way to the top man and get him to change the way the auction was done on the machines which they wanted to throw away, the presses. How do you do it? That is one question I wanted to ask him. So if I
And
met
do you
him,
think he's going to answer? I mean, he would have answered.
I mean, if of course could have said that it's my whatever. I don't know whether he would have answered or not, but I would want to know that.
It was really wonderful talking to you, Bhaswar, and thank you so much for spending time with us and sharing your learnings with us. I'm sure all of us are definitely going home back with a lot of notes on how to really write a non-fiction if we ever get to it. On behalf of all of us here at Penmancy, I would like to wish you all the very best, not only for Abdul Karim Telgi, but all your future writings.
Thank you so much. So I'll just show the book one last time. So this is the
Yes,
book. So if you
please.
have not picked it up, please do so. Just one part, and thank you so much, Chandra, for hosting this show. You did it very well. One of the last things I want to talk about is that please, guys, if you are interested in writing about a topic, go ahead and take a stab at it. People
Right.
always believe that writing fiction is easier. That's not true, because in non-fiction you have a lot of material available. It's just the way you are putting it together and the way you're presenting it and how you can put your creativity into it, at the same time keep it credible and true. Second is that the number of words which you will actually need to grab for non-fiction can start as little as 35,000-40,000 words, whereas
Right.
fiction typically would take 60,000-70,000 words. So you're giving it at half the effort with a lot more information available to you. So why are more people not writing non-fiction?
And there's a wider market available.
And there is a wider market. You'll get a publisher faster.
We have a lot of budding writers here who dream to be authors someday. So probably this should inspire many of
Absolutely.
us.
Absolutely. Please do so.
Definitely. All right. Thank you so much, Bhaswar, for joining
My
us.
pleasure. It's been lovely being here. Thanks to Penmancy. Thank you so much for hosting the show. And I hope it was useful, and all the very best. Stay safe.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And now you
It
can
was
go for your
wonderful
third
talking
dose
to you.
as well. Yeah.
Thank you all to our viewers for joining us. So, all right then. So, bye-bye from both Bhaswar and me. Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.